Hey, what's up guys? This is Redfield and today I'm going to be taking you through our track Resolute with myself and Sam Sax. Let's dive straight in. So the way that this track came about was Sam and I have been Instagram/TikTok friends for a long time and we always wanted to work together on something, and so I came up with a minute's worth of ideas, like 8-bar loops kind of put together all in one thing just to see what she was kind of feeling, and they sound like this. Just really kind of stripped back ideas. Just like a variation of stuff. And then Sam then went through and did a whole bunch of takes that sounded like this, just kind of riffed over them all. I'll just play through them quickly so you can kind of hear what's going on. As you can see, there's so much gold there, and there's 7 takes worth of that stuff. So what I wanted to do was kind of chop something up so it sounded like a bit of a sample from like an older record. So what I did was, you can hear in take 2, that's kind of the opening sound that I went for as the lead in for the riff. Let's turn that up a bit. And I'm going to unsolo the whole, I'm going to solo the entire group, sorry. It's got the lead in. Now I really like that bit, so I made that the main bit. So this was me slicing up take 7. So if we listen through to take 7, this is what that one originally sounded like. So much energy even in the recording. So then I think I took it and sliced up heaps. Oh, sorry. So that ending is from a different section, so if we expand that, see what it sounds like. So it's got that end bit from halfway through, and then take 5. I don't think that's actually in the final version, but what I've done is I've opened up an older version of this session called Sam's Town, which is a version that never got signed, and it's an old, I think it's like a year old, basically because you can actually see the cuts that I've done in this record, whereas in the final version, in Resolute, basically Sam then went and replayed the cut that I did to make it feel a little more fluid, and then I actually sliced up what's called take 5 to be a bit more glitchy. If we expand the sampler. Now I kept that in Resolute rather than having it played again because I wanted it to feel a little bit more robotic, a little more like a splice. A splice? Yeah, a splice or a sample. Let's dive into the final session. Let's go. So let's do the radio edit. I don't know if you guys have watched my tutorials before, but I do the edit for the full version, the extended version, and the radio edit all in one thing. So that way any EQ changes, compression, blah, 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 it's all done together. Saves me having to do it twice. So yeah, let's have a look at the radio edit. So as I was saying before, you've still got that, you can see I've labeled it old because we've used the older version. And all the takes are actually in here, so I did use the old version of take 7 as the lead, as the main one. I'm pretty sure though there's bits where I've used the new Sam playing it in again. Oh yeah, there was some new extra bits that she added which I thought were really good. So let's have a look. So this is that sample that I made, got the slice. And then you've got this new lead in that she played. It's amazing. I loved it. And then she played the new version. Let's get that out so you can hear it. We haven't got the ohs or the wahs. Oh wait, no. There we go. This is the new one, sorry. This doesn't exist. Yep, so that just then carries on. Also, I added this big lead in. I don't know if I stretched it. Let's see. Yeah, I've stretched this first note here. Because you can see here, it's at 145 BPM, which means that I've stretched the sample because we're operating at 130. So yeah, that's got that happening whilst the original take is disappearing off into the distance. And then you've got the other one coming in on the drop. That's the original one. So yeah, that's the sax in Resolute in all of its glory. Sam killing it always. It's a shame they don't have the alts from the first one. They were amazing. I remember keeping them in on purpose in the original version, but this one is just pure energy now. So let's take a look at the track in general. So if you've watched one of my videos before, I process the drums in a very specific way. You've got your kick here. Let's see if we've got all the processing on. Quite short and punchy. And this is the processing going on here. I won't dive too much into it today because if you want to see all the processing that I do, if you check out some of the other videos I've got on my Instagram/YouTube channel, but this is just going to be a quick look of what I've got going on. Some saturation. It's annoying that it's opening up on the other screen. Some very slight compression. If you look at the mix, it's on 8%. This is just like really adding extra click and bite to the kick. Some limiting. And this shaper box with just for me to be able to take a look at the waveform in general. You can see there's quite a lot of delay going on, but doesn't matter. It worked out well. So that's the kick. I have my entire drum group sidechained to the kick drum. 1.5 dB gain reduction. Try and keep it around 1.5, between I guess like 0.5 to 1.5, just to give that kind of power to the drums if we solo the drums. It just kind of glues everything together, getting that real punch out of the kick drum. I have everything in two separate bands usually, and then a build band. So we've got your mids, which is all your claps, loops, etc. So let's go loop those around. Everything has got, all the drums have a version of standard clipper on it, just to kind of catch those transients, just add a bit more space in the mix. So I'm just going to click through. Rabbit tape is going to be on most of this stuff actually, because I loved it. Loved it, I love it. I think it adds this old analog vibe to it. Okay, let's take a look at the, oh, I've got a percussion group as well, okay. Is that in the mids? I think that should be in the mids, right? Yeah, it is. And then your highs, which is going to be your hi-hats, shakers, rides, just so you can kind of control that. You see I've got rabbit tape again, but only a very small amount, 2%. I didn't want it to sound too dull. I just wanted to tame some frequencies a little bit so it's less harsh. Probably done some control or on the top end as well. You can see there. And I think that's it. On the top group in general, I do a XL expansion, which basically widens the frequencies. You can see on the master, it's got 29%, but then I go in on the sides, do some compression, very slight amount of compression on the sides, but then boost it. It adds a lot of width to the track to turn it on and off. Oh, that sounds worse because it's filtering. It just does. it just does add like a different dimension to it, ever so slightly. So that's basically the drums, the tops, sorry. I have a parallel compressor going on as well, you can see here. That is just the API 2500. I just use a preset called Heavy Comp. So if we have all the drums going at once, we turn that off, it just adds a smack to it. And this track, the compression is quite aggressive. I wanted it to sound like an old school, heavily compressed house record, piano house record with Sam on, with a sax track, so with a saxophone on as well. So that's why it's really quite compressed, and try to keep everything a little more dull rather than like really clean. The reference track I used to the guys at Toolroom was the Return of the Wolfie, and I think Second Story, both by Mark Knight. So the fact that it got signed to Toolroom is sick. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of those records, and they were definitely a big influence on the final deleted reference, which I use for everything. But I guarantee if I open that up, it would be in there. Let's have a look. Actually, I'll do that. Let me go back, open up it again. Yeah, so opening reference, let's have a look. Second Story, yep. Return of the Wolfie, yep. And then Adelphi Music Factory, Salvation. There's energy in that. I wanted that kind of energy. And then I Feel For You, I wanted that piece of the Piano House reference in there. So it was kind of a mashup of these 4 tracks I wanted it to kind of sound in. And reference 2, if you don't have it, get yourself that. This is the most useful plugin, I think, out there for getting your mixes to like your final stages once you've done all the writing, etc. So this is the processing I've got on the drums. It's actually not the usual drum bus that I would usually use for drums, obviously. I've got Sausage Fattener on here, which I don't really use on drums. I guess I wanted a little bit of energy. It's like 2%. The 7X500 is something that I used to use all the time as a parallel processing for compression. As you can see, it's also barely on. Where's the visualizer for this? It's not. Okay, well, you can see how much of dry wet it is. I used to have that on my drum bus the whole time, but now I use the API 2500 as an actual send for my parallel compression. It just gets that more smack out of it without any treatment on. The Soothe 2 I use for taming some of the harshness, and the limiter. So let me turn these on and off. You can kind of hear what they're doing. Okay. So that's with everything on. It's a huge difference. So yeah, that's the drum group right there. Let's dive into the bass. I wanted like an old school organ bass, so obviously I went with the M1. So let's solo that. Okay, the bass is out. I've usually used this low cut replacement thing. Well, it's called a low cut replacement because I had another version of low cut which I made, and I've replaced it with this. I think the frequency is just a bit higher. So now all the low ends in, but I've got rid of some of the super lows. I've got 30 hertz, and you've got the R bass doing some not so subtle warming up at 103 hertz. Normally I'd be a little bit more subtle about that, but I guess I just felt like the frequencies just weren't there. Normally I think I'd probably I'd add like a sub to it and then cut out all the stuff above that frequency, but I guess this time I wanted to do that. So let's have a look at the processing going on the bass. So you got your Pultec doing some dipping at 500 hertz. The MV2 is squashing it as a compressor, up and down compression, or upwards and downwards compression, sorry. Getting rid of some of those tops, boosting again, wow, 109 hertz. And the limiter was on again, but I've turned that off. And I think you've got the SP950, which basically just makes it sound a little more retro, adds some more analog sound. I use rabbit tape a lot more now than I do use this. This was something I was using before, but this is a before and after of what it would sound like in the final version. Right, let's get to the drop. The level isn't too different which is what I always try and strive for when I'm doing my processing, because if it's just going to jump up in volume, that's obviously going to make everything sound totally different. So if we're looking at the leveling here, before we're on, okay, you can't see, hang on. We're on 9.16, and then without it, that was quite a big jump. All right. I mean, it's what, like 5 dB? It's not huge, but that's still a lot. Fair enough. Normally I try and keep things on a level, but yeah, there you go. That's that. So that's the bass, pretty straightforward. I think that's just left over from just having a spare channel from when I use a preset for whenever I load stuff up that has drums, bass, synths, leads, extra leads, etc., effects and vocals all laid out, and I have a MIDI and an audio track on each one. The synth group, these are all the fillers that are gonna add width, depth, and also just vibe to the track. Add some kind of groove. So we go into the breakdown. We got a held string and the disco stabs, which I think are pitched. Let's see. Yeah, they're pitched. This is the pad, which I use from Zebra 2. I love the really warm sounds of Zebra 2 for like big pads. And I wanted this one to kind of creep in rather than just kind of hit, so I did a high pass. It's a bit weird, it could have just kind of come straight in, but I wanted this to kind of swish in. Let's turn it up. It's just providing super lows and movement as well. Very wide, lots of voices. Set that back down. This was just to add some kind of movement. There's a whole bunch of processing going on this. So that's the processing going on this sound. Now I use this thing called Endless Series, which I'm guessing is in Endless Smile in behind the scenes. It can create this constant movement. If I turn up the wet really quite drastically, you can hear it. Do you see how it's phasing? But it's constantly sounding like it's rising, so it's always adding tension. I do that in a lot of instruments that I find that are like the tension builders that are just kind of sitting on a note or something. Just adds like this kind of cool movement. Okay, let's do the piano, because I know there's heaps of stuff on this. So it's the M1, standard M1. Very little processing on the actual channel. Nexus 2, this is going to be adding a wider sound. So the two together. I wanted the Nexus 2 on there because the M1 is so mono-central. It's I wanted it to have more energy on the sides, and so I did that by adding the Nexus 2, getting rid of all the lows because I wanted the meat to kind of come from the M2. I don't know if I've controlled that as well. I don't know, I've done very little processing in M1, just some taming of this frequency here. But I think that's because I did a lot of the processing on the actual group. Yes, look at this. What is going on here? So what we got? We've got Radiator. Actually, I'm going to open it all up so it's all there, and we'll go through it one by one. And bang. That's as many as I can fit on the screen. So we'll go through this and then we'll move on. Okay, so in order of what we're using, there's the Radiator. That is just adding some analog warmth. Then there's an EQ, so that's open here if you want to have a look at that, just boosting some of the mids. Then there's the SP950. And also after that, you've got the RC20, which I use all the time, which is, again, getting rid of some of that brightness. You can see the magnitude there. It's not at full whack because I didn't want it to be too dull, but it's just kind of making things a little bit flatter. The inflator, just doing its thing at 100% and then turn down, just, you know, inflating it. This is Ozone, full mix, a bit of vintage compression. I wanted to add some width to this band here. not too much on the tops, and an exciter SL channel, and it's just on with a little bit of gain. I literally think I just saw someone do that on Instagram, and I was like, all right, let's give that a go, and I like the sound of it. Rabbit tape, again, not on 100%, 17%, and then standard clip, just kind of catching some of those peaks. So let's have a listen, the with and the without. That's with. That's different. It's definitely louder, obviously. Heaps louder. It's just adding that, all of that energy. Spectra. After all of that, I have done some saturation to these bands here. I love Spectre so much. I have stopped using. I never really turn stuff up on EQs too much, he says, when I've done it over there. But I rarely turn up on EQ. What I start to do is I use Spectre. What I have started to do is use Spectre and turn up different bands. And I've always felt that's a much better sound than cranking an EQ. It just thickens things up a little bit. So there's your mids and upper mids turned up there. Center 1 I love. I've just added some brightness to the center to make it more clean or brighter, I guess, in the center. Track spacer, this is just going to be sidechaining against the bass. Oh, it's because it's sidechained to the group, so I need to turn this on. There you go. Just getting rid of 350 hertz and down. Not even getting rid of, just controlling. So because of the M1 with that organ sound, it's quite a thick sound down there as well. And that's something I would do anyway, regardless of the bass sound. Soothe 2 on the piano enhancer preset, I guess. Oh yeah. Really getting rid of this this sound here. These. Yeah, that's great. Just warming it up again, making things a lot less harsh. Then high pass, gain, automation. I guess this is some more taming. Yeah, a multi-band dynamic I use. Again, I'd much rather use a multi-band dynamic or something like Soothe 2 to control rather than turn down peaks. Just to add movement, and also sometimes you don't want to fully like turn down that frequency because it can dull a sound. So yeah, that's why I did that. I do that all the time, especially on groups. Sausage fattener, I know this is on for, I think, the final drop. Once the sax has been playing through the drop, I'm pretty sure this comes in on the final section, although it looks like it's on now, which is fair enough. Let's have a look. I know I definitely used it on the final drop. Oh, I just took it out. Yeah, you can see it was on. It comes in halfway through the second drop just to add that bit of power for when the sax came out. Because once Sam has been removed, all that energy then disappears. And I really wanted the energy of the track to still keep going. So in order to do that, I then bumped up, I'm pretty sure, the gain. Let's have a look here. If we click here. Yeah, gain's on 0 on the drop. And then almost 3 dB and the sausage fattener come in on that final 16 bars of the end of the drop, just so it's still like going and the piano is still going, because I loved it as a piano record. That was originally how it was. Actually, I think I wrote it as a piano record. Yes, I wrote this as a piano record, and then there was a big breakdown that just felt like it was missing, and I realized that it was in the same key as the other track I wrote with Sam. Sam's Town was what the other track was called. And I whacked this on and bosh, that is what happened. There you go. I have the worst memory. Oh, and then some more frequency controlling here. Let's go here. So you can see it's 30 decibels, but it's just really cutting these out. Hollowing it out there. But that was just so it kind of made space. And then I think it's just the effects, really. Let's have a look. These are just like, if you've watched some of my other tutorials, I use basically the same effects for everything. So you got your noise riser here. That's just a white noise one. It's from the Leviathan pack. a rising that holds over the drop, if you listen in context. Just maintains tension, and you've got a downward sound as well. Oh, that's the white noise one. I use that a lot. Yeah. Another riser by Leviathan. Even though these are technically labelled as like dubstep builds, I think they work really well. And then is this a big? Yeah. Yeah, but this is something I wanted this to kind of keep going rather than just stop. So what I did was I added a echo on, half note echo, just so that it constantly goes for ages, just to maintain that tension. And I think that is everything. Let's take a look. All of the effects, by the way, are on. Yeah, I've turned them off. They were originally on the channel for the sax itself, but I've muted them, and they're now up here in the sends. Because I didn't want them to be too heavily sidechained. I wanted the lead, the actual sound of the sax, to cut through. That's why there's a sidechain compressor on against both the lead sax and the kick drum. It means that the transients and the original sound of the sax, or whatever you use it from, if you're using a send, can cut through the mix, and then I can EQ them a bit better. So I use exactly the same sounds that I was using on the chain. As you can see, there's nothing there anymore, so that's why they're muted, and put them on there. It meant I had more control. I didn't want to put too many effects on the sax, and in areas, especially on the drop, it can sound kind of dry-ish. You kind of have to listen for the effect, but I wanted it to be really kind of able to cut through on people's phones and laptops and whatever people listen to. I didn't want the sax to be swamped in effects. I wanted it to be like, this is the sax riff cutting through. You can hear it a mile away. Bang. That's what it is. So that's why I was umming and ahhing about the levels of the effects I was going to use, but that is basically why I used it as a send, and that's why it only ever really gets to like -8, and that's on the reverb. If I bring up the reverb, as you can see, I color coordinated it so I knew that the sax is going to be here. I used a old Lexicon reverb. I'm hoping it's not going to die when I press this. Yes. Okay, cool. For some reason this crashes when I open it. So that's the reverb I use, kind of a vintage style, hence the vintage plate, because I wanted it to just sound old school. So yeah, that's all the effects as well. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this was useful. And I have been Redfield. And go check out Sam Sax's Instagram and TikTok. And download this, stream this. Thanks so much to Toolroom for signing it. We're really excited for it to come out. I can't wait for people to be playing it out and about. It has so much energy. And I'm buzzing. I've been Redfield. Thank you very much.